village where people whispered secrets, Omari woke up at 6:30 a.m. and walked to her pot of water to wash her face. But when she looked into the water, she froze. She touched her face, unsure of what she was seeing. Then, with a sharp cry, sadness filled her eyes. Something was not right. Trying to shake off the feeling, she turned away and walked to her chair. She sat down and began taking out the wigs she had made the day before. After arranging them neatly in a big nylon bag, she got up and set out for her salon. Omari was a beautiful young woman with a sleek dark hair. Her eyes were very beautiful, and whenever she passed by, people always turned around to give her a second look. She was a beauty to behold in the village. Before she even arrived at her salon, some customers were already waiting to get their hair done. In that village, the women cared only about their looks. They were constantly in competition about who looked better, who dressed better, and whose husband was doing better than the others. Some of them would rather go hungry than miss the chance to get their hair or their children's hair done. Omari had a variety of wigs and different sparkling colors of attachments that were unique. No one had ever seen anything like them before. Some women would visit the popular market near the village, searching for the exact same wigs and attachments, but they could never find anything that looked like the one Omari used on them. Whenever Omari styled their hair, the women always looked so beautiful and different. However, as soon as they stepped into their homes, marital issues would arise. Instead of their husbands admiring them, there would be quarrels and misunderstandings. The children who got their hair done at Omari's salon often became rebellious and acted out of place. Yet, strangely, they always listened to Omari. Whenever they started acting aggressively towards their mothers at the salon, they would instantly calm down at Omari's command. No one ever questioned why this happened. They simply saw Omari as a woman loved and admired by everyone. However, the hair Omari usually used on them had an unusual effect, turning children's minds against their parents. As for the women, while the hairstyles initially made them look beautiful, by the time they got home, their appearance would change. They would suddenly look older and unattractive, causing their husbands to feel nothing but resentment towards them. Whenever the women visited her salon, they often spoke about how their husbands had been treating them at home. All Omari did was listen and smile as they talked. Their complaints and pain gave her strength and joy, filling her with the best feeling ever. At the start of her day, Omari often felt sad, but the moment she heard news about misunderstandings in the villagers' homes, it brightened her mood. Every night, Omari would chant words for a few seconds before removing her head from her neck and placing it on her thigh. She would then pour a green liquid over it. A bright glow of transformation would appear, so intense that it could even blind anyone who witnessed it. Then, the hair on her head would begin to grow, fill the room with its length. She would cut it off, reattach her neck, and carefully arrange the hair into rows of attachment and beautiful wigs. Chanting softly, she would gaze at each attachment and wig, willing them to take on the exact colors she desired. Once she was satisfied, she would pack them beautifully and set out for her salon. The incidents of men and women having problems in their homes continued, while children remained rebellious. Omari's salon kept growing in popularity, attracting more and more people. Many were curious and often asked her where she bought her hair products. Omari would simply smile and say, "This is business. Do you expect me to tell you where I get my special products from? I don't want any competition," she would add jokingly. A woman named Amani, who lived in the same village, had begun to notice a strange pattern. Every time her neighbors returned home after making their hair at Omari's salon, quarrels would soon follow. Instead of receiving compliments from their husband, they would be met with harsh words and even threats from both husband and wife. One evening, after a long day, Amani sat in front of her hut to rest. When her neighbor, Kara, returned home, they exchanged greetings. Kara's hair looked so beautiful, and Amani complimented her, stepping closer to admire the hairstyle. But when she accidentally looked into Kara's eyes, she saw something unsettling, something different. A chill ran through her body, and she immediately withdrew, though Kara didn't seem to notice it. Moments after Kara entered her hut, loud quarrels erupted between her and her husband. Amani grew more concerned, but she couldn't quite figure out what was wrong. Unlike most women in the village, Amani had never made her hair since childhood. She had always been sick, and her parents, fearing for her health, decided to keep her hair cut short. She grew up with this lifestyle and never felt the need to style her hair. Some of the women in the village often mocked Amani because they felt she looked less of a woman for not making her hair. Whenever she passed by, most of them avoided associating with her, seeing her as a woman of low class. One day, as Amani was walking past Omari's salon, she saw a young girl nearly fighting with her mother. She was surprised because she had always known the girl to be good and quiet. However, ever since her mother started making her hair at Omari's salon, the child had begun acting out of place towards her. As Amani watched from a distance, debating whether to scold the child for being aggressive towards her mother, she suddenly noticed Omari's glance at the girl and firmly told her to stop. To Amani's shock, the girl immediately calmed down. No. Something is very strange. And yet, no one is noticing. No one is even asking questions. Or am I just overreacting? She asked herself. That evening, when she returned home, she began piecing everything together. But she had one problem. These were all just speculations. It was still possible that she was simply imagining things. But then, something inside her kept urging her to look into it, so she decided to follow her instincts. She made up her mind to quietly follow Omari home to observe her. However, when Omari arrived at her hut, she simply went to bed, and all Amani could hear was her snoring from inside the room. Just as Amani was about to give up, she noticed something unusual. There were numerous pots of water lined up at the back of Omari's hut. While she was still wondering why Omari had many pots, she suddenly heard footsteps. Panic surged through her, and she considered running home. It was already too dark and very late. Curious, she peeked through Omari's small window, and what she saw sent chills down her spine. A body holding a detached head. Fear gripped Amani. She shivered, almost wetting herself. This was beyond anything she had expected. In that moment, she was certain she might not live to see the next day. Then she saw Omari pour the mysterious liquid over the hair, and instantly an abundance of hair filled the room. Suddenly, Omari's head turned slightly, almost catching Amani's eyes. But Amani was quick to react, ducked just in time. Unknown to her, Omari had already sensed her presence. Omari remained silent as the magical transformation began, filling the room with a bright, blinding light. Overcome by curiosity, Amani peeked again, only to realize too late that she had made a grave mistake. The moment her eyes met the light, everything went dark. She could no longer see. That was exactly what Omari had been waiting for. She knew that anyone who witnessed that light would go blind and never live to see another day. Amani started screaming and crying, shouting, "My eyes! My eyes! I can't see!" Omari stepped out of her hut, looking at her with a wicked grin and said, "Curiosity killed the cat. Now you have no sight. Why didn't you just leave things alone? But today, you won't be able to tell the tale of Amari." She laughed and laughed her voice echoing into the night. Amani, still struggling with her blindness, managed to say, "Your days are numbered. You may cover your tracks today, but someday you will be exposed." Without hesitation, Omari quickly poured the green liquid on her. In an instant, Amani vanished and reappeared inside her own house. The next morning, Amani was blind and unable to speak. She lay inside her hut, weeping helplessly. By evening, Kara, her neighbor, noticed that Amani had not come out all day. Out of concern, she decided to check on her. When she entered Amani's hut, she found her lying on the bed, motionless and weak. Kara tried asking what was wrong, but Amani couldn't speak. Seeing her condition, Kara helped her up and took her outside to sit and get some fresh air. And so, Amani's suffering began. She struggled every day with no one to care for her or offer her help. Meanwhile, Omari went to her salon as usual, continuing her evil craft on the villagers. She was pleased with herself, confident that she had covered her tracks carefully. A few weeks later, a young and handsome man from a nearby village, whom Amani had previously bought local medicine for a toothache from, came to deliver the medicine to her. To his surprise, he couldn't believe that Amani had lost both her sight and speech. Looking at her closely and being a spiritual herbalist, he immediately sensed that she was under a powerful evil spell. He quickly gave her some herbs and a stick to chew. The moment she did, the spell was broken. Amani could see and speak again. Her strength returned and she could not thank the young man enough. Without hesitation, she ran to the king of the village and told him everything about Omari and what she had witnessed. The young man, who had accompanied her, confirmed that Amani had indeed been under a spell. He then proceeded to examine the eyes of all the women and children around him who made their hair at Omari's salon. Turning to the king, he declared,
"They are all under a spell. If this is not handled soon, the entire village will fall into chaos."
The young man and the villagers, who barely believed him and Amani, went to Omari's salon. As they approached, the young man blew a powder into the air. The moment Omari inhaled it, she staggered out of the salon, sat on the ground, and instantly transformed into an old woman. Immediately, some of the men and women recognized her. As the spell on their faces and minds vanished, they screamed, "She is the witch who was banished from the land! Kill her!" But the young man from the other village quickly intervened, saying,
"She must have had her reasons. Let's hear her out first."
Omari let out a wicked laugh and said, "I haven't even begun with you all. I will make life unbearable for every one of you." Omari was once an old woman with spiritual powers, which she used to help people. One day, the king, who had no child, begged her to help his wife conceive. She agreed and gave the king's wife some herbs, along with instructions on how to use them. In time, the queen was able to conceive, but just when it was almost time for her to give birth, she suddenly died. The king was devastated and he blamed Omari for the death of his wife, unaware that his jealous brother had secretly planned it out. The brother paid a maid in the palace to poison the queen, determined to prevent the king from having an heir. Overcome with rage and grief, the king nearly burned Omari to death. However, instead of killing her, he chose to banish her from the land. Omari left, carrying the weight of guilt and pain. But over time, her sorrow turned into hatred, and she made up her mind to return and destroy the village. Consumed by anger, she sought the help of an evil herbalist who gave her powerful spells and a mysterious liquid. These spells did not only make her look young again, but it also allowed her to manipulate others. Knowing that the villagers worshipped beauty, She used their greatest weakness against them. When the king heard the truth, he wept bitterly and immediately ordered that his brother be beheaded and his body thrown into the evil forest. Filled with remorse, he apologized to Omari and offered her a place in the palace. However, she rejected the offer. Though she forgave the king, she chose to live in peace and continue with her normal life. A few years later, Omari passed away. In time, the king remarried and finally had an heir. That is the end of the story. If you love the story, please give the video a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, please do that as well. You can also watch the other stories displayed on the screen. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on my next one.